So, this is going to be lecture 1 on Susan Faluti's The Naked Citadel. And what we're going to focus on today is a little bit of close reading, and we're going to talk about what that is, and a little bit of broad sweep, generally trying to figure out what's happening in this essay. I asked in the close reading assignment, in the, I just had lunch and I was sleepy. The writing sample assignment, for you to explain to me, or for you to make an argument, or for you to just tell me what the hell Naked Citadel means. It's the title of the essay, The Naked Citadel. How could a citadel be naked? A citadel is not a person. What does Susan Faluti mean by the naked citadel? Of course, at no point in this essay does she say, when I name this essay The Naked Citadel, this is what I mean. You're not looking for a passage where she tells you, this is what I mean by the naked citadel. You are going to have to infer from what she says and what she writes how this term, the naked citadel, is or maybe is not representative of a kind of argument she's trying to make. Because just like you, writing these essays, Faluti's making an argument. She never says, my argument in this essay is that the naked citadel is a citadel that's naked. She's never explicit. You'll notice that there's no thesis statement. The thesis of my essay about the citadel is that it's naked, and by that I mean this, this, and that. So when I say, what does naked citadel mean, I might also be asking, how does naked citadel, as a term or as a title, encapsulate an argument? What is she arguing about, and what point is she trying to make? You'll notice in the first 2 paragraphs, what we get is a lot of description. She's just describing stuff. With maybe a little bit of editorializing, but mostly description. Along the edges of the quad, in the gutters, the freshman cadets were squaring their corners. The knobs, as they are called, for their nearly headless doorknob pates, aren't allowed to step on the lawn of the broad parade ground, which is trimmed close, as if to match their shorn heads. Keeping off the grass is one of the many prohibitions that obtain at the Citadel, a public military college on Charleston's Abbey River. Another is the rule that so many of the cadets say brought them to this Moorish-style gated campus. Girls keep out. So that's the first sentence and first paragraph of the whole essay. It's important. What is happening? We get an image, initially. Freshman cadets, young. So college, so maybe your age, freshman. 18, 19, and they got their heads shaved. And they're called knobs because their heads look like doorknobs, freshly shaved. So we get a kind of militaristic image. And then we get an interesting comparison. The lawn of the broad parade ground is trimmed close as if to match their shorn heads. So now we get a comparison. She's not made anything explicit yet. We're just trying to put something together. So a freshman cadet, all right? shaved head. And then we get the parade ground. Trimmed close, like their head. Immediately we're being asked to draw a comparison between these freshmen. I'm gonna make them look a little scared. And the physical architecture of the Citadel itself. What does it mean? Or what kind of sense is Flutie trying to cultivate here? What kind of argument is she trying to make? This idea that these scared freshman recruits with their fresh shaved heads, that really makes them look more like inanimate objects, doorknobs, resemble the physical architecture of the building itself. There's this idea that the Citadel, even though it's a word describing something material, a building, is somehow deeply connected with these people that are there. That the whole ideology, the whole culture of this military school is reflected in these students. And then we get this strange kind of segue, right, in the last sentence. Another is the rule that so many of the cadets say brought them to this Moorish-style gated campus. Girls keep out. This is, of course, since we've all read the essay, like good freshmen, probably, the important thing about this essay. Shannon Faulkner is a girl. And she's not particularly welcome. Actually, she's not welcome at all at the Citadel. Why? And this is, if we were to say one of Flutie's main questions, why do they care so much? Why does it matter so much? This number one rule, no girls allowed. Why is it so important? They give her lots of reasons. Well, the physical requirements are very stringent here, and it's not clear that a girl could pass them. But then Flutie points out, you only made the physical requirements mandatory after you realized that that Shannon Faulkner might get into the school. You didn't care before. And in fact, there's lots of instances of people not passing the physical requirements, sitting around and smoking cigarettes instead of running. So you'll notice when you're reading this essay how often people are chucking up reasons why women shouldn't be allowed. And how often those reasons, it's not that they don't even make sense, they kind of make sense, but they seem like not the real reason. They seem like well, it's tradition. We have a fine tradition. What tradition of what? A tradition of not letting, that still doesn't explain why. You have a tradition of not letting women in. Well, you had a tradition of not letting black people in. You had all sorts of traditions. You don't do that now. What I want us to pay attention to as writers is the way that Flutie is just really kind of describing stuff right now. Yes, she's making comparisons and she's using images, but she's not saying this paper argues this, in my opinion this. She's just describing. We'll move on to the second paragraph. The campus has a dreamy, flattened quality, with its primary colors, checkered courtyards, and storybook castle barracks. It feels more like an architect's rendering of a campus. Almost preternaturally clean, orderly, antiseptic than the messy real thing. And here gets us to one of probably Fluti's central I don't know if you want to call it rhetorical or what you want to call it, but simply her central methodology or her central mode in this essay, which is what the Citadel wants to be. And what the Citadel really is. This is an essay all about contrast. So we go back to that sentence. It feels more like an architect's rendering of a campus. So, in that sense, the kind of idea of the ideal campus, right? This blueprint, a drawing, angles, clean, no people, nothing ambiguous. It's all, right, preternaturally clean, orderly, antiseptic. And then she says, the messy, real thing. Well, Susan, what does that mean? This, in a sense, is a thesis statement. Which is kind of funny. She doesn't say, my thesis is, this paper argues. This is what a master craftsman of essays does, of course. Which I'm not expecting us to be. But it's worth paying attention to. There is a thesis statement of sorts, or a sort of sentence or set of sentences that serve the same purpose as a thesis statement. What does a thesis statement do? It introduces you, prepares you for the way that an essay is going to unfold. That's what this sentence does. Here is what the Citadel kind of looks like. Clean. Right? Here is what the Citadel actually is. Messy. Wants to be, pretends to be, looks clean, is indeed messy. And though we're going to be having to take a deep dive into ideas of gender, performance, masculinity, race, history, all these big sort of big ticket issues, right? Gender, history. This paradigm that I'm locating here, or really that Susan is putting here, is really going to be helpful for us. Because almost always in this essay, every time someone at the Citadel says, this is how we do things here, this is what we're about, this is what we do, you're always going to get Flutie coming in and saying, actually, pardonnez-moi, actually, seems to be what's going on. Third paragraph. And we're going to start to see how this sort of essential paradigm that I established here is going to start sort of seeping its way through other things. Mostly it was the young men themselves, with their doughy faces and twitching limbs, who gave me the urge to babysit. Despite their enrollment in a college long considered, quote, the big bad macho school, the cadets lacked the swagger and knowingness of big men on campus. So at the start, in the first paragraph, we had a comparison. The shaved heads of the cadets and the trimmed lawn. This implies, in this comparison, in this likeness, that potentially the Citadel produces men that resemble its stern, dignified, rigid militarism. You will come out of here a Citadel, a human Citadel. Yet immediately what we get into is the distinction between the kind of masculinity, the kind of men the Citadel claims to create, or the kind of men that it claims to attract, or the kind of attributes, as vaguely defined they are, of a Citadel man, versus doughy faces, twitching limbs, right? Can you imagine? Right? This ain't Rambo. They perched tentatively on their chairs, their hands arranged in a dutiful clasp on their desktops, as if they were expecting a ruler to slap their knuckles. A few dared to glance over at the female visitor. But whenever they made eye contact, they averted their gaze, and color stained their cheeks. So we'll talk more about this next week. What am I at? 17 minutes? I'm gonna do a couple more minutes. But what this first page does, it establishes the context around which this Shannon-Faulkner beef is going to unfold. What does the entrance, or the possible entrance of a woman, do to this fantasy? She calls it a fantasy, right? Dreamy, so maybe not fantasy, a dreamy, flattened quality, right? That there's this idea that there's a very clear projection that is covering up a messiness, trying to cover up a messiness, and there's a fear that somehow, by accepting Shannon-Faulkner, this becomes compromised. Why? This is Flutie's question. Why? Why would a woman then fuck everything up? Page 72. Why shouldn't she be permitted into the Corps? One of her students recited the fitness requirement. 45 push-ups, da-da-da-da. An alumni, however, reported that many upperclassmen skipped the unit of morning run, skipped the fitness requirement. Another student cited the shaved head rule. Women can't shave their head. Having to bellow and greet a command. Sir, yes, sir. Sir, no, sir. Sir, no excuse, sir. But women, obviously, are incapable of obeisance. One might even say they have a long history of it. And this is another thing I think we should appreciate about this essay. Faluti's very sarcastic, and she's got a very dry sense of humor. And a lot of the dry sense of humor comes out of poking holes in this. Right? You'll notice in this essay, the big essay on page 72, the format, which is excuse that a student gives, fitness requirement, and then, for the next couple sentences, it's faluti, poking holes in it. This is what you say, this is why it's wrong. But then this, okay, this is why it's wrong. This is what you say, this is what it actually is. The Citadel. Tough word, strong word. A fortress. Naked. Vulnerable. Exposed. Caught out. Even the hint of sexuality. There's two things happening here. The Citadel is being exposed through this essay. Right? Faluti is taking off its clothes. Faluti is undressing the Citadel. The Citadel is dressed up in a fantasy of martial, stern masculinity. But when you peel off those clothes, and when the Citadel is naked, you see something else entirely. And naked like these boys. They're cloaking themselves in these behaviors, in these performances, in these rituals. But they're scared, doughy-faced, exposed, naked. The Naked Citadel, the title itself encapsulates the paradigm that I just started with. That I just showed. Citadel is what they want you to see. Naked is what's really going on. Naked is the grittiness. Clean, messy. Citadel, clean, naked, messy. And we're going to talk next week about how this plays into the strange, what we will, and we could even jump forward a little bit to get you thinking about it. On page 82, read the first paragraph there. When Michael Lake looked back on the abuse he suffered during his abbreviated knob year of 91, he could now see before him, like the emergence of invisible ink, right? Something that was invisible coming out. The faint outlines of another struggle. What he saw was a submerged gender battle. A bitter, but definitely fixed contest between the sexes. Concealed from view by the fact that men played both parts. Spicy.